A couple weekends ago, you probably remember I did a live stream because there's, 12 of you here. Most of you have been riding with me since day one, stream one. And thank you. Thank you, all of you. You guys are awesome. But I talked about Matthew Livelsberger, the man who allegedly blew himself up in a Cybertruck outside of Trump Tower on January 1st, 2025, about 20 days before Trump took office in his second term. And he was trying to warn us. And whether or not you believe his manifesto and these emails that he sent to different special forces, if you believe those are real or manufactured, for whatever reason, if this whole thing is a psyop, it still asks the same question, or I still have the same question, whether it's real or a psyop. And that is, why was he talking about anti-gravity, China, essentially an alien technology Cold War with China is essentially what he was talking about. Why have all of these research over time, over history, the last century, die or go missing when they're getting close to figuring this technology out? For sure, by the end of this, you're probably going to have more questions than answers. I've been looking into this a lot, and every time I look into it, I'm left with more questions than answers. It's very confusing. So hopefully today we can kind of kick this off. I don't imagine I'm going to be able to go through everything about this topic today. I'm going to play a clip from one of my favorite creators on YouTube, the Y-Files, AJ Gentile, and his fish, the Hecklefish. And he did an episode quite a long time ago, actually, 2 years ago, which is probably around the time that I discovered his channel. He actually does a really great job of explaining what anti-gravity is. So let's learn a little bit about what anti-gravity is before we can even get into the conspiracy.
Energy device that used the 0-point energy.
You guys can hear everything.
That's what
fine?
They referred it to as 0-point
Thumbs
energy.
Audio's
and
good.
It was connected in such a manner that this device could power, from a very small flashlight or a very small watch up to a city. And the power was determined by what the demand on it was. And so each craft had one of these.
Anti-gravity technology is another reality that's been suppressed for years. And researching anti-gravity, even for the US government, is very, very dangerous. According to multiple inventors, many of which are now dead, alien technology might not be so alien after all. Italian researcher Johnny Dotto created a large ring to go around the human body. Its purpose was to alter DNA to reverse aging. Now, made of heavy copper, the Dotto ring manipulates the magnetic field around a human body using gravity and frequency. It was inspired by the Hunza Valley in Pakistan, where people rarely get sick and routinely live for over 100 years. Now, most researchers say their longevity is because of exercise and a healthy diet. But Dotto had a different theory. He said the extreme heat from the valley and the cold from the nearby glacier created a magnetic anomaly in the area. This protects DNA and slows the aging process. The Dotto ring was even tested at Sloan Kettering Hospital.
Copper is a really interesting element. Very interesting. I've been drawn to copper like my whole life. I used to do HVAC, and I actually did a lot of copper work, like copper, like decorative work on homes and stuff a long time ago. And I used to take the sheets of copper and I would do interesting things with them, like apply heat so that they would get all colorized and all sorts of stuff. But copper if you look at the history of copper, I mean, I could maybe even do an interesting live stream about this at some point, but copper, very interesting.
It successfully lengthened the subject's telomeres, the part of our DNA that shortens as we age. The ring worked. And just like Sparky's device, Dotto's device could levitate. Then the FDA became involved.
And everything went downhill.
Yep, they shut down Dotto's research. Not long after that, Dotto was hit by a car that ran over him multiple times. The levitating, age-reversing Dotto ring vanished. T. Townsend Brown used a high voltage and electromagnetic field to create a lift effect. This allowed an...
Now, we're not going to watch this whole, section of the video or anything, but I just wanted to go over these two people because this is where the story kind of starts.
Object to move at high speeds, free of the force of gravity. Brown made a flying saucer.
As with many other promising inventions developed during the Cold War years, the National Secrecy Act prevented scientists like T. Townsend Brown from commercializing or even publicizing any technology which could potentially be interpreted as having a military application.
Now, anti-gravity or antigravitic technology was popular in the 1950s. The United States and Canadian governments were both working on anti-gravitic technology.
Like I said, this is not new. This has been in the works a very long time.
Farmed this work out to well-known aerospace companies like Lockheed Martin, Convair, Bell, and Lear. The research was actually out in the open and created a buzz. People were excited about the new G engines and how this technology would revolutionize traveling. They talked about how everyone could have a flying car. Airplanes wouldn't need any fuel to fly. This is one of the last public mentions of anti-gravity technology.
Lawrence D. Bell, the famous builder of the rocket research plane, says, "We're already working with nuclear fuels and equipment to cancel out gravity." And William Lear, the autopilot wizard, is already figuring out gravity control for the weightless craft to come. According to the gravity research engineers, the G engine will replace all other motors.
After that, everything went dark. So what happened?
Good question. What happened? And I don't know. I don't know what happened. In fact, nobody who's researched this actually knows what happened. If you've been to whokilledthescientist.com, you know I'm doing a ton of research over there. Now, I created a new page, and it's around this topic of anti-gravity. And we're talking about the entire history of anti-gravity, the research and just pop culture and all sorts of stuff. Because I think it's a much bigger conspiracy than people realize. Yeah, I think this is a bigger conspiracy than people realize. I'm not going to go through the entire thing here. I want to let you guys do that and leave that up to you. But let's kind of go over some of the points here. Okay, 100 plus years of research, 14 aerospace companies since the 1950s that we know of. 22 million in DIA and OSAP budget around this. 5 dead anti-gravity researchers and 1 missing general, General McCaslin, because he keeps becoming this central figure in this conspiracy. Not as a perpetrator, but as a potential victim, but potentially as a perpetrator too. Who knows? General McCaslin for sure is the person to watch. And if you go to whokilledthescientist.com and you go down here to the bottom to this connection nodes map, General McCaslin is a very central figure. That's why he's literally in the center of the mind map. And it's not just one institution, it's multiple institutions. Multiple different programs, directly working with multiple different scientists. And this doesn't even have all these other people that are attached to this that I think are part of the conspiracy more than some of these other people that have been named by the, mainstream media, which I'll just say the whole mainstream media thing picking up this scientist story, they let it run wild for like a couple weeks. Government started talking about it. Trump very oddly said, we're going to have answers in a week and a half. Very distinctly said a week and a half. And then it got memory hold. And then boom, oh, now we're releasing UAP files. Just take that timeline as you will, as whatever it is to you. But to me, it smells like a psyop. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't still look into these things, because we should understand the psyops. We should understand what they're hiding from us, or what they're not hiding from us, or what they're pretending to tell us. Mad World says then they could bleed us dry for fossil fuels. Maybe. There's a lot of powerful things at play here, or this touches on many powerful things. If we're talking about energy and we're talking about Iran and the Strait of Hormuz, I think things are far more connected than we may realize. So anti-gravity is the idea that gravity can be shielded, modified, or reversed through technological means. It has occupied a strange twilight zone between mainstream physics and classified military research for over a century. Dozens of major aerospace corporations openly researched gravity control in the 1950s, then went completely silent overnight. Pentagon grants went to university physicists who then vanished behind security clearances. Navy engineers filed patents for craft using inertial mass reduction devices, and a growing list of researchers in the field have died or disappeared under circumstances that have drawn FBI investigation and congressional scrutiny. That is the very, very Cliff's Notes version of what's happening here. There was a massive explosion, as stated earlier, in the research around anti-gravity. I think at that time we really wanted to get ahead of this technology, be the ones, right? Especially after like World War I, World War II, America really wanted to be at the cutting edge of weapons, military type things, because let's be honest, the Germans were ahead in World War II, technologically speaking. And then we Operation Paperclipped a lot of them, brought them over here and started NASA and started a whole bunch of other things. And then we became the leaders of technology in a lot of ways ever since then. And I think at that time, the 1950s, so this is, right after World War II, we start putting a lot of money into research, into science. And one of the things that we dumped a ton of money into was anti-gravity. Why were they looking into anti-gravity at the time? Well, you could argue that just a few years before, there was a crash at Roswell. If you believe in that, was that our first ever encounter with other life, whether it be us from another dimension or another time, or aliens from another planet in a civilization? I mean, I don't know. You tell me. I also find it very interesting that in the 1950s, there was a massive boom in futurism. We were selling a lot of futurism, sci-fi. So we talked a lot about flying cars and things of that nature in our media. Some might say that's predictive programming. Some could argue that. There's quite a few entities here that are a part of this, at least in the 50s, right? So it was 14 major companies. By the 1960s, they were all very quiet about this particular technology, but you will recognize some of these companies. Glenn L. Martin Co. with the RIAS Institute, Convair, Bell Aircraft, Lear. If you are into ufology, Lear is a very important name. Sperry Rand, Douglas Aircraft, Lockheed. This is before the merger with Martin, I'm assuming. General Electric, Boeing, Sikorsky, Clark Electronics, Hiller, Northrop, like Northrop Grumman. Sound familiar? And Curtis Wright. So like I said, you will totally recognize some of these names. And they were looking into these sorts of projects. Now, you got to look at companies like Lockheed, Northrop, Boeing. Everything they do is propulsion, whether it be rockets, weapons, or aircraft, right? Obviously, General Electric. Different companies that were involved in this research, and we had gone very deep, but then all of a sudden they stop. Now, obviously, there is more people who had done research in between 1960 and say today, but there's a big gap in at least what's talked about. But there are very interesting people like Amy Eskridge, who, if you came in when I started the stream, that's who was on the screen. That's who was talking. She's also the first who had died that is recognized as being a part of the conspiracy, though I've made some statements about people that I think that had passed away earlier or who had experienced things that maybe prevented them from doing science that were also very key figures in a lot of this stuff. But we're just talking about anti-gravity today. So let's kind of start with Amy Eskridge because she's very, very, very central to this. She's very recent. Like I said, I played like part of an interview with her. It was like her last big interview. And it's the one that like people sort of talk about. And a lot of people will like to talk shit on it because she was getting drunk, right? Like she started with a buzz and then she even starts at the beginning of the thing saying like, oh, cool. This is like chill. So like maybe I can get more drunk. But the spirits are, they're truth serums. You know? That's what I think. I think they're truth serums.
Amy Eskridge did not work for the government. She worked for her own company whose name was long and it escapes me right now.
Also known as the Gravity Research Institute.
So in review, cancer researcher, MIT physicist, they're kind of out on their own separate islands. The three people working at Los Alamos / Kansas City who are not scientists. And now let's go to the latest one, Amy Eskridge. Amy Eskridge was 34 years old, I believe, and she died in 2022. And the Daily Mail just put this all together. And remind me right after this, Steve, I want to come to your timeline of the story coming together too. Okay. That was really good. Steve put together a great timeline of like how this got into the mainstream. Of
they
like
should check out my timeline.
But Amy Eskridge did not work for the government.
Yo, Julian Dory.
Escapes me right now.
Also known as the Gravity Research Institute.
I love his producer. Also known as.
Wait, that was the name?
That's like the name. It was called the Exotic Sciences Institute, also known as.
Okay, the Gravity Research Institute?
Yep.
She was working on anti-gravity. She was working on the stuff that my friend Jesse Michaels has been obsessed with and has done some great work on. You can think along the lines of some of the Townsend Brown research he's done. You also had Charles Bueller on recently to discuss this. It gets to things that defy gravity, and you wonder where the technology comes from and if it was emanated from things that are not of this earth that we're in possession of. It gets weird, but it is a real physics concept and something that there's a lot of people who believe they have some evidence with it as well, that we do have it and it does exist and we know how to do it. And how we got that is up for argument, but certainly something that would be scientifically earth-shattering, no pun intended. So Amy worked on this stuff, and she worked down in Huntsville, which means she's working with, like, when she's running her own company, Deef, you're dealing with the government as clients.
Yeah.
You're working on a contractual basis. NASA has a famous base there in Huntsville. This is where a lot of the Operation Paperclip guys went, that does a lot of rocket propulsion stuff. There's been some folklore related, and that's actually that's a really conservative way of saying it. I said folklore, but like some folklore related to UFOs and UAP from down there. The other one you always hear about with that as it pertains to military related places or government related places is not just Area 51, but Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, which is a whole kind of separate thing. Did you have something, Deef?
I just wanted to make note that she is dealing with NASA a lot in what she's doing. Okay. They even did pull back in 2020. She was going to be planning to present novel foundational work regarding anti-gravity, but she needed approval from NASA.
Okay. So she also said in 2022, what was the exact quote, Deef?
Yeah, so this was during a podcast. If you stick your neck out in public, at least someone notices if your head gets chopped off. If you stick your neck out in private, they will bury you. They will burn down your house while you're sleeping in your bed, and it won't even make the news. That's why the Institute exists. And that was her institute.
And she talked about that a lot, about being vocal. Because if you're like a little bit public, maybe they can't, or maybe they have to think twice about killing you. But also, COINTELPRO, they killed. And we're talking back in the 70s. Just look at Jimi Hendrix and all this mysterious wine that he drank. And he wasn't drunk, but he drowned in wine. Totally. That's totally normal. This isn't a long video. I don't like to watch like whole videos on stream, but this is a really good video.
Institute.
She also had a direct quote, I forget where I put it, where she talked about her life being in danger. Yeah, she said, damn it. Yeah, she warned my life is in danger. It's in the headline of a Daily Mail article as a quote, who UFO linked scientist who, quote, warned my life is in danger, unquote, found dead at 34, becomes 11th mysterious case. And the part of that they should have been more clear on, that was a little bit misleading, is it made it sound like she was found dead yesterday. Yeah. She was found dead in 2022. Yeah. And, you know, this is a brilliant woman with 1 million degrees working on some crazy shit. Stuff that is, you know, in the technological race of just the world itself, a country gets to that kind of stuff first. Not only do you not want to tell people, but you are 10 steps ahead of any other country before they even find out they're behind. And her disappearance, this is more of a red one for me. This is more like something there. Again, it's 4 years ago though. So let's look at that timeline of this story.
There is something there. She also talked a lot right before she killed herself, mind you. Kind of compelling.
Developing, Deef. And real quick, before we do that, I'm going to hit the head and then we'll be right back.
Okay.
All right, we're back. Before we keep going into this, Deef, I just want to say something. Looking at the time, there's no way we're going to end up getting to Swalwell and some of that stuff today. So what'll happen is Deef and I will record that. That'll be bonus content on Patreon, and we got to get to, and then we're going to.
There was no police report of her self-inflicted gunshot. No autopsy, and rapid cremation was ordered. So those
Who ordered it? The family?
I could keep looking. I couldn't get anything concrete to say.
Interesting. So The fact that she's saying, and again, people get paranoid sometimes, but then she does off herself, and you wonder if that's what it was.
And you do wonder. So let's talk a little bit about Amy Eskridge, because she is very compelling. She was one of the only ones that was talking about this conspiracy as it was actively happening to her. And you just can't say like, oh, she was like interjecting herself into something. Like, no, she was like multi-generation. Like her father was like an absolute badass in this field of research. In fact, she started the institute with her father. And people like her have like this like level of like, I'm assuming some sort of autism, so that like I have like the ADHD, probably autism, that makes me like able to do this, but she has the one that makes you do this and makes you put connections together in very real ways, and maybe the type of autism that gave her the courage to fucking talk about it and talk about the things that she wasn't allowed to talk about. And maybe that's why she died. Because I don't believe for a second that she killed herself. I don't know, or maybe should we learn a little bit more about her and then ask that question? But if you're familiar, let me know in the chat now if you think that she killed herself. Because I do not. But let's get a little bit more familiar with Amy. Where is she? Where are you, Amy? There you are. And if you don't know, I revamped a lot of whokilledthescientist.com. There's so much more information. Like, I mean, look at this. Just look at this. And these are like sources to like her different works, all sorts of stuff. Timelines, the investigation. I mean, a good goddamn. Enrolled in UAH Material Science PhD program, though she didn't complete it. Self-taught in electrical engineering, physics, genetic engineering, and nanotechnology. Yeah, I don't know if you guys caught that. I said she was self-taught. Self-taught in electrical engineering. Just that one, people go to like 8 to 12 years of college to like really become masters of that. Self-taught, electrical engineering, physics, genetic engineering, and nanotechnology. Shit that like what the fuck, dude? Yeah, she's pretty fucking smart. And that's why she comes off kind of kooky when she's talking. Because not only that, in that interview, like where she's drinking and stuff, people like her, that level of kind of intelligence, you need some sort of like intoxicant to kind of like calm your brain down to the point where you can actually talk. Like where you can like come off cohesive. Because her shit is going here, there, and everywhere. And normies like us, like, it's very easy to discredit somebody like that as being fucking crazy. Because we just label shit that we don't understand. You can't understand her, so she must be fucking crazy. Not, I'm way too stupid to fucking understand what the hell she's talking about. She co-founded the Institute for Exotic Science as chairwoman president and holocron engineering with her father, Richard H. Eskridge, a retired NASA propulsion and researcher at Marshall Space Flight Center, who published 8 peer-reviewed papers on plasma propulsion. Right? It's in her blood. She's fucking legit, dude. And all the people that tried to say she was crazy, she's fucking legit. And if she, and I believe her, if she's talking about like fucking directed energy weapons being used on her, If anybody is rubbing elbows with the people that know what that shit is and how it's used, it's her. Amy appeared on History Channel's The Proof Is Out There in 2021 and 2022. On May 13th, 2022, 29 days before her death, she texted business partner Samuel Reed, "If you see any report that I killed myself, I most definitely did not." Kind of like how the day that David Wilcox allegedly he did a 3-hour live stream and literally said I would never do that. If you hear that I did that, I did not do that. And then he did that? Really? You think? You tell me in the chat. Did he do it? I doubt it. Let's go. She told former British intelligence officer Frank Milburn she was being targeted by a directed energy weapon, RFK band emitter, ruled suicide by Madison County coroner, single inflicted gunshot wound. Well, at least this time they only did one, so it actually made sense. Unlike Gary Webb, who we named the Webb after, allegedly shot himself twice in the back of the head because every suicide I've ever seen or heard about or looked into double taps. They double tap. You know, it's just how it happens, right? It just double tap. That's right, Marie. It just happens sometimes. They just double tap sometimes. So again, this woman decided she was going to go out and be vocal and talk about this shit because it's a lot harder to kill you or to discredit you or things when you're being vocal and you're bringing it receipts, right? Which kind of lends to the theory of what's his name, Bob Lazar. Bob Lazar went public, whether you believe in him or not. Like if you believe he's bullshit, a psyop, or you think he's telling the truth, he's been in the public eye since 1989. I mean, it could be legit. Like maybe maybe he's just too public for them to kill. Amy was public in the right places, but not like to normies, right? So she was in Huntsville, Alabama, and that is central. Huntsville, the city of Huntsville, central to this. Some of her published works was a historical perspective on anti-gravity technology, pulsed electromagnetic plasma acceleration, worked on a lot of her father's work. And when she passed away, the official ruling was suicide by single inflicted gunshot wound to the head. Pre-death warnings on May 13th, 2022. She texted her business partner, "If you see any report that I killed myself, I most definitely did not. If you see any report that I overdosed, I most definitely did not. If you see any report that I killed anyone, I most definitely did not. If anything happens to me, suicide or an accident, it wasn't. It's suspicious. Treat it as such." It's just interesting when somebody goes out of their way. Like most people who tend to kill themselves, they don't tell people. And they certainly don't tell people that like, I'm not going to throw off the scent. Why? It's like, why would you bring up something that you would intend to like not flag? That doesn't make any sense. Certainly not to me. And so, like I said before, directed energy weapons claimed she told former British intelligence of RFK band emitter powered by 5 car batteries inside an SUV. She sent photos of burn marks, lesions on her hands as evidence. I don't have those pulled up right now, but I mean, just think of a burnt hand. That's what it looks like. Havana syndrome. Representative Burlinson suggested she may have suffered from Havana syndrome, unexplained symptoms caused by directed microwave energy. Maybe, but I don't think she was crazy. I don't think she was making shit up. And I don't think she had Havana syndrome. And her father has consistently rejected any conspiracy theories describing her as a marvelously intelligent person who suffered from chronic pain. Isn't it interesting that you look at a lot of these scientists and stuff, right when the newspaper started talking about this, some of them mysteriously just come out all of a sudden and say, no, we reject that they were ever part of a conspiracy. No. I mean, they just totally just disappeared in the mountains. You know, call me crazy, but I think maybe sometimes they get pressured. Their family gets pressured because how credible does it seem? Dr. Ning Li is another very interesting person. And to kind of bring you up, because you may never have heard of her, she's a Chinese American physicist. So, China connection. I think there's a mega China connection, but we'll see. I mean, there is a China, there's a string of missing and dead scientists in China right now working on the same shit. And Matthew Leibelsberger talked about essentially what I would call a Cold War of these technologies between America and China is pretty fucking advanced. So, So she was a Chinese American physicist at UAH's Center for Space, Plasma, and Aeronomic Research. She's world's leading researcher in superconductivity-based gravity modification. The theory that people are putting out there is rotating ions in a high temperature superconducting disk could generate a gravito-magnetic field strong enough to neutralize gravity. She told Popular Mechanics a bowling ball placed anywhere above the disk would stay exactly where you left it. The DoD grant. AC Gravity LLC received $448,000 from the DoD in 2001. No results were ever published. Her son says she continued anti-gravity research for the DoD after obtaining a top secret clearance. She simply could not discuss her work. In the end, she was struck by a vehicle on the UAH campus in 2014, causing permanent brain tremors, and she died in July of 2021, a year before Amy Eskridge. Her work is directly cited in DIA Defense Intelligence Reference Document number 14. And she was very, very connected to Huntsville, just like Amy.
The DoD. But then Ning Li just fell off the academic radar. She stopped publishing papers, stopped making public appearances, and before long, people began to wonder if this promising physicist who seemed to have unlocked the secret to anti-gravity had gone missing, or maybe worse. We did get some tacit confirmation that Ning Li was still working with the Department of Defense in 2004 when a journalist investigating her disappearance named Tim Ventura didn't manage to hunt down Ning Li, but did manage to get in touch with one of her colleagues, another scientist named Eugene Podkletnov. Now, Podkletnov relayed that she was doing fine and was still working with the US military, but could not offer any further details into the nature of their work. But after that, the trail pretty much went cold, and by 2008, 4 years later, people were beginning to fill in the blanks with their own conspiracy theories, starting with a scientist named Jack Sarfati, who took to social media to post that he knew for a fact that Ning Li had made significant strides in her anti-gravity efforts, but had since decided to leave the United States to return to continue her work for the Chinese government. Now, this idea that a Chinese citizen would come to the United States to work their way into a position helping to develop advanced military technologies for the US government, only to leave and take those technologies back to China with them, very quickly started making the rounds online because, well, it's pretty believable. And this idea got another...
And also, some of the Chinese scientists worked in Ohio, right near Wright-Patterson, a part of the same university that is attached to Wright-Patterson. Am I crazy? But the coincidences are kind of coincidenting. I don't know, you tell me, guys, but
UFO community because of the nature of her work. But I can say pretty conclusively that based on my research, this never happened. In fact, Ning Li lived in Huntsville, Alabama until the day she died in 2021. In July of 2023, a journalist named Noah Logan, working for the Huntsville Business Journal, decided to see if he could get to the bottom of the disappearance of Ning Li after watching an excellent video about the topic published on the YouTube channel Barely Sociable. I highly recommend that video. I'll include a link to it in the description below. Now, Logan's research very quickly brought him to the same conclusion that mine did. An obituary for one Dr. Ning Li, published on July 27th of 2021 by the Berry Hill Funeral Home out of Huntsville, Alabama. And this is definitely the Dr. Ning Li that we're looking for. The obituary states very clearly that Ning Li was, quote, one of the world's leading scientists in superconductivity anti-gravity. But the obituary offered very little else in the way of details, except for the name of Ning Li's son, George Men, who still lived in the Huntsville area. Logan soon managed to get a hold of George Men and put at least part of this mystery to bed. We now know that Dr. Ning Li continued her work with the U.S. Department of Defense for the remainder of her life. In fact, at one point, her son even asked her about the secrecy related to her work, and she gave him an excellent answer. I'll quote him directly here. First off, you don't know anything. Second off, if you even think you might know something, you forget about it. And he said, okay, that's fine. Her son also shed light on why Dr. Ning Li stopped publishing her work. According to him, once she started working with the Department of Defense and secured her top secret security clearance, she began working on classified programs and was no longer allowed to publish her findings, which Dr. Ning Li seemed to not like very much. She loved publishing her work. And we also learned that there was at least a kernel of truth to the idea that the Chinese government wanted Ning Li to continue her research in China. According to her son, CCP officials visited Ning Li at her home in 2008, asking her to leave the United States to return to China to continue her work there. Ning Li rejected the offer, and as a result, the Chinese government barred her from entering the country to attend her mother's funeral. Unfortunately, Ning Li's story has a tragic end. She continued her work for the U.S. military at Redstone Arsenal and on the University of Alabama campus until 2014, when she was walking with her husband and she was struck by a car. Her husband, who wasn't hit, was so shocked by what he saw that he had a heart attack and passed away. Ning Li herself suffered brain damage, which was later compounded by Alzheimer's disease, and she spent the remaining 6 years of her life bedridden and being taken care of by her son.
What a fucking travesty. And of course, I have her in the candidates as a tier 1 because I think it's crazy to not talk about her. You know, people don't talk about her because it's less mysterious. Oh, she was hit by a car, and then she was, had brain damage, and then she passed away some 6 years later. And it's very easy to discredit that as not being something that seems nefarious at all. But look at what she was working on. And then look at the history of these different people. So different people who passed away doing research around this. And they all kind of go in different ways. And we have definitely an understanding of how far our government goes to protect things. It gets a little nutty. It gets a little nutty, and I don't want to pontificate too much on it, but you can let your mind wander on that. But Ning Li, I think she's somebody to look at here. Even if the funding dried up, wouldn't it behoove these companies to still search for it, to still get it going? Because if they were the ones to figure it out, they could have the patents. They could rule the world. But I think Ning Li, Amy Eskridge, Neil McCasland, they're into some kooky weird shit. Because I don't believe for a second that those companies stopped researching those things. at least not outright. I think there's not a chance in hell that we ever stopped. And what you see time and time again is there was all of this public research being done, and then the research stopped. But then also they started working for the government. So it's not that it stopped, it's that they started working for the government and the government stopped talking about it. It's pretty simple. I mean, that's like, I don't even think that that's a conspiracy theory at this point. That's clearly what happened.